Welcome to the Liberated Equestrian Podcast and community. This is a place for horsewomen to experience belonging, breakthrough, and becoming. I'm your host, Lisa Pulliam, founder of StableMinded.us, mental health professional, second season equestrian, and author of Finding Calm, helping riders navigate through fear and anxiety. The Liberated Equestrian is devoted to the mission of being set free and experiencing breakthroughs in every aspect of our horsemanship and humanship. This is all about mind, body, heart, and soul care for ourselves, our horses, and the people we do life with, so that we can grow together as a community of emotionally and relationally healthy horsewomen. So find a comfortable spot, take a deep breath, and let's embark on this journey of becoming liberated equestrians together. On today's episode of the Liberated Equestrian Podcast, I want to share with you some things that have been going on behind the scenes in my journey. A journey of faith, a journey of horsemanship, journey of entrepreneurship, journey as a therapist. It's been an interesting couple of months since I launched the podcast. And my desire to find that breakthrough and belonging and becoming that I have shared, that I'm so passionate about bringing to you, my fellow equestrians, has really been something I've been experiencing personally in a fresh new way. And so I just wanted to take a few minutes and kind of let you peer into what's happening in my life, in my heart, in my mind, and where you might see some shifts in the content that I'm producing. So, backstory. When I re-entered the horse world, it was 2018, 2019 for myself, like literally when I got myself back into a saddle. And then, of course, COVID hit, life changed dramatically for so many of us. At the same time that I was in this kind of entering into the equestrian space, I had been actively leading a ministry uh, called More to Be. And I was a coach and I was training coaches and things were booming. And I was a decade into helping women experience transformation and launch into their dreams. And so I was working with multiple women a week from around the country, even around the world, to be honest. I was doing a lot of speaking. I was pretty actively involved in what we would call like full-time ministry and full-time running my business. But the heart of that ministry began when we lived at the boarding school. And at the boarding school, I was involved mentoring teenage girls. They were my heartbeat. When More to Be initially launched, it was to create an online filing cabinet for the resources I was using with these girls, biblically based resources about life transformation. And then it evolved through book publishing deals and needing to have a target avatar and enter the market in a particular way. And then we moved. So it shifted from a focus on teenage girls to really a focus on Christian women. And what I found working in that space over that really concerted decade was that brokenness was pretty significant. That there was definitely a cycle that I saw in women over and over again. It was a cycle that was familiar to me of burning out, of trying harder and trying to figure out how to do all the right things and please all the people and reach all the milestones, and yet still ending up in the same place of defeat and despair and discouragement. COVID hit, anxiety rose, conflicts rose, change of priorities took over. It was just like a lot happening at that time. Well, at the same time, I entered into this equestrian space, went through my training with natural lifemanship, and for the first time thought, hey, I think I'm actually smart enough to be a therapist. And the reason I thought that was because early on in my experiences of education was not very positive. And one might just say I didn't do so well in psychology when I was in college eons ago. And I thought, I'm not smart enough to handle the biology part of being a therapist. Well, training through natural lifemanship opened my eyes to the impact of trauma and the neuropsychological implications of living in trauma, having your body in that sympathetic nervous state and survival. Go back to listen to the episode on trauma-informed practices and you'll see what I'm talking about. And learning that information was another personal breakthrough for me in my healing. I realized that all the effort that I had been putting in up until that point in my personal life, in terms of taking that biblical approach of prayer and trusting God, and the scriptures say, "Be transformed by the renewing of your mind," in Romans 12:2. Take captive every thought and make it obedient to Christ. That's 2 Corinthians 10:5. Those two biblical principles were foundational to my first traditionally published book, Meet the New You. And I've been doing that and doing that and doing that. And I was still hitting a wall in my own personal growth journey. And then I encountered this trauma informed approach and what was happening in the nervous system and the body. And I just chased it down hook, line, and sinker, and realized, like, hey, this is part of my healing that I need. And as I watched God really work through that approach and work in me through my work with the horses and heal and grow and see my relationships transformed, I wanted to give more of that back. And I realized that the women that I was coaching, they were stuck because they didn't have this access to this information. And as a coach, that wasn't my lane. I needed to refer them to a trauma informed therapist, but I had trouble finding those trauma-informed therapists. So, boom, 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 add in a mix of undiagnosed ADHD, boredom in what I was currently doing, burnout in a very serious way that I didn't recognize at the time. And I applied to grad school, got in, and next thing you know, I'm off and running in completing my natural lifemanship certification, in a master's program to become a clinical counselor with trauma as my concentration, and still trying to carry this work of more to be, and yet being a little burnt out by the same stories over and over again, that I felt like I couldn't do anything to fix. So I reached a point where I realized I couldn't do it all. I couldn't manage more to be. I couldn't also manage this other side of my business, stable minded. I couldn't manage this with uh, being in grad school. Plus, I was still, actively parenting my teenage and young adult children, taking care of my marriage, so on and so forth. And so I made some pivots. I ended the ministry eventually. Um, just stopped putting that content out and just focused on graduation. And some of you will know what life was like for me. Uh, it would be from the time of this recording a year ago, and 2 years ago, but went through a lot of really difficult situations that were outside of my control within the horse world. Barns being sold, relationships with certain individuals being very unhealthy, and I don't feel like in the public domain, it's not appropriate to talk about the context of those relationships, but just a lot of really heavy, heavy heart stuff and scary stuff in terms of the stability of my career, the stability of my horse, the stability of my life overall. Oh, and throw in the mixed, some really hard losses, like losing my mother-in-law, losing my father-in-law, navigating through different dynamics, two children getting married, and life just shifting because of that. I can now look back on everything that's transpired in the last, say, 6 years of my life, and I see a thread of burnout and survival patterns shaped from my earliest developmental stages that basically set me up for burnout, because I was living with no pain, no gain, try harder, pull yourself up by your bootstraps. And that on top of that was this be humble and gentle and be forgiving and gracious. And, it must be my fault. I must have done something wrong. And that's also part of some of my distorted thinking from my childhood. And I basically like cruised hard and fast into some very serious burnout that I have been recovering from over the last 12 months. And it's not even just burnout as you would think about tiring out from a particular job, but the ramifications of past trauma colliding with present trauma without the resiliency skills to navigate through that, and without feeling the freedom in the midst of trying to finish my graduate school degree to stop and take care of myself. And by God's extravagant grace, I have been surrounded by a super supportive family. My husband and my children are the best people on the planet. And I've had a great therapist for the last 18 months who has used the situations of suffering in my life, past and present, to link those stories together and help me unravel the lies that I have believed over all these years. And in the context of my therapist support and my uh, family support, my husband's support, pulling back on the pressures of what I need to do and how I need to accomplish things and how I need to contribute to the family. And then add into that two really amazing supervisors that I have been working with as I'm pursuing licensure. So I'm under supervision, and both of those women really speaking grace and truth into my life and helping me take care of me and take care of the boundaries that I set. And then having this opportunity to be in the same place for a very long period of time with my barn people and my dear friend Caitlin, who's the owner of Concordia Stables, and having her support in helping my horse get sound and fit and just her being part of the healing in my life as I continue to heal with Cody. And I'm at a place where I can finally say I'm out of burnout. I am on a really good healing path that isn't just about the healing from the most recent struggles and sufferings, but healing that goes way, way, way back into experiences that forged my belief about myself, my belief about others, my belief about God, my belief about this world. And those things getting clearer and clearer in my mind's eye to really align with truth and move in a way that enables me to have healthy expectations on myself and my capacity. I've seen this bubble up in my joy in working with clients. I've seen it bubble up and spill over in the ways that I'm able to put the computer down at the end of a day and sit and watch one screen with my husband or my teenage daughter who's home, and we'll watch a rom-com together. And so she's not even going to be a teenager by the time this releases. She'll probably be a 20-something by the time this comes out. But just really being able to see the evidence of that shift. And so I'm sharing this with you because I am going to spend some decent bit of time re-preparing content that I've actually shared in the past around this idea of burnout for high functioning women who aren't necessarily experiencing just it in career, but that there's an emotional weight and burnout that comes especially for equestrian women who find themselves in the responsibility of this, very expensive, ginormous creature that lives outside of their, ability to control, and are in experiences with potentially other individuals that are just not healthy, and that dynamic that can be a contributing factor to this burnout. But the other thing that I've come to realize that just may rub some of you guys the wrong way, and honestly, I'm totally okay with that at this point. And I wasn't when I first started Stable Minded, but I am now, is that there was a belief I held that my faith needed to be separate from my practice as a therapist, that those two things could not be interwoven. And I think because of my burnout working with people in ministry, and what I saw and felt that made me so disillusioned, it was easy to kind of say, okay, I'm going to keep this part of me over here and I'm going to focus on this part of me instead. And I've literally come full circle, and this is very hard to say, but I've come full circle because I've encountered just as much brokenness and pain in the horse world as I have in the Christian world that I've been a part of. And I find that really interesting at how awful people can be to one another. And when you're a coach and you're a therapist, you get to hear how awful people are to one another. That just reinforces the experiences that you have had. And I'm like, huh. So when I was helping people around growth and transformation from this biblical perspective, and I thought something's not working, they need more of this. And then I've spent a number of years now working with people in this mental health psychology perspective. And for some of my clients, the biblical principles and truths are sewn in where that when they know where I stand with my faith and my work, and they're like right there with me on that, and I'm able to integrate that into their care. But I've come to a place because of my own journey, and I've come to a place because of these two worlds that I've had the opportunity to be a part of, to say, I'm done separating. Like faith and psychology are integrated. Just like I say, humanship and horsemanship are integrated, right? How we are as a human is how we show up with our horses. And how we are with our horses in the worst way is how we show up with our humans. In the best way, I would hope that's how we also show up with our humans. And when it comes to this, like mental health and faith, these things are not separate. They are one and the same. God designed our minds, our bodies, our nervous system. He created us for relationship and connection. He designed us to be loved and loving. He designed us to be holy and whole in our body, mind, heart, and soul, and in connection with others. They're not separate. The brain is an organ in the body, and just like we would take care of the brain, just like we would take care of another organ in the body like the heart, if the heart's not pumping correctly, we die. And we need to get treatment to get our heart to work and function. And we sometimes have to take medicine to keep the heart functioning. And we sometimes have to do certain physical activities or adapt our diet or go see a cardiac specialist to take care of our heart. The brain is an organ located just a couple inches above the heart that also needs mental fitness, it needs exercise, it needs nutrition, it needs emotional stimulation, it sometimes needs medication, it sometimes needs support in ways that look medical and clinical. But at the end of the day, the heart and the mind does not exist separate from the soul, and it does not exist separate from the body. It's whole. And throughout scriptures, God tells us to love him with all of our heart, soul, mind, and body as an integrated whole. And I've been, unfortunately, trying to make sense of how to separate it or prioritize one over the other over the last 6 years. And I'm done. I'm not separating it anymore. And I am not going to prioritize one over the other. It is all under the headship of Christ, who is my king and my savior. And I believe that wholeheartedly, that I believe that Jesus died on the cross for the forgiveness of my sins. That at the end of the day, I am a sinner. I am the wretch the song talks about. I have turned from God at various points and gone my own way. And him in his mercy receives me home again and again and again. And so this, I really do think that this healing, this breakout, breakthrough from burnout has come because of the relationships that are healthy in my life and those people who have demonstrated the love of God to me through the connections with my therapist and my supervisors who have spoken truth to me, through the medical treatment that I have received for ADHD and the health issues that I've been suffering with, that all of this shapes who I am. And in the healing, there's so much hope. There's so much good. There's so much joy to be at home in the body that we were given and not parsing it out in separate ways. And, leading it back into horses, like that's what Cody has required of me, to be fully present when I'm with him, to not have my mind racing over there, to not be, defensive and hypervigilant over here, but to simply breathe with him, to move with him, and to enjoy the ride, to thank him for it when he allows me to climb on his back and canter off, and to appreciate his limits when he says, not today, this part hurts, and being able to respond to that and saying, hey, I acknowledge your limits too. You're not an ends to my means, uh, or means to my ends. I always screw up stuff like that. You're not a means to my end. And God has really used Kodiak Jack uh, as part of my sanctification and transformation in this last 2, 3 years. It'll be 3 years in July of 2025. That as I have suffered maybe at the hands of my own decisions and have suffered at the hands of somebody else's decisions, that as I have dealt with what I have brought on myself with just the choices I've made to adopt Cody when I adopted him, that in and through all of that, all of the difficulties that I've been through, all of the challenges that I've been through, there are some parallels in my life in that when I have been at the least of myself, totally broken, there's no place to look but up. And when God saved me in 1993 in that London dorm room, I was at the bottom of the barrel looking up. And I would say in the last, in 2024, I hit the bottom of the barrel of my identity and my worth and my value and my purpose. And God has graciously invited me to look up again and see him. And that is freeing in more ways than I can even find words for. It is life transforming. So, what does this mean? I don't know, maybe you won't see a difference in what actually comes out from Stable Minded. Maybe you won't see a difference in what comes out from Liberated Equestrian. I still very much believe that each person has to pursue their own journey of healing and of faith and transformation. And I wholeheartedly believe that just because I say something that resonates with you that is good or right or true does not mean that you will do something about it. We each need to have our own encounter with ourselves and with others and with God. And we have to have our own experience of what am I willing to change and what direction am I going to walk forward in as a result of that change. So maybe what you're going to experience from me is more transparent sharing about the struggles that I'm going through, because I will go through more. That's part of life. That's life this side of, Eden on our way to eternity. I think you're going to see more biblical application in what I talk about, getting back to the heart of integrating the scriptures into the application of neuropsychological principles, where there's this totally integration between faith and psychology. And I think for those of you who are only interested in this equestrian side of life, you're still going to see the same principles that I practice with the horses and in serving you. I actually probably believe in them more deeply from this perspective of stewardship. And for those of you who are totally not interested in the horses at all, you're just listening in on this podcast because you're curious about what I'm going to say. I'm here for you. You could take it or leave it and love my horsey stuff or not, love my faithy stuff or not. Um, yeah, I I wrote a blog post recently that was months in the making about all the things I quit. I'm quitting being all things to all people, and I'm quitting listening to the gurus, which ironically is what I talk about in Finding Calm. Stop listening to the gurus and come up with your own theory of horsemanship. I think I've stopped listening to the gurus, maybe the voice of Satan. Uh, and I'm coming up with a biblically sound theory of humanship that resonates deeply with the promises of God's word, that I am a chosen, holy, and dearly loved child of the Most High King, and that the call that is on my life is to tell you about that good news. I've lived life without Jesus and I've lived life with, and I'm telling you, he is the savior and the one that fixes us. And in that, there is still a deep responsibility that we are given as human beings to care for the state of our mind, our heart, our body, and soul under the authority of God. And that there is no excuse for bad behavior towards horses. There's no excuse for bad behavior towards humans. And that we need to hold ourselves more accountable to the things that come out of our mouth and the way we treat one another, because we are all made in that image of God. And if we lived that way, if we really buckled down and said, I'm going to do everything I can to love one another, because that is the greatest commandment, to love God and to love others as self, this world would be different. Horsemanship would be different. Faith would be different. And being part of the community of God would feel very, very different. So I'm done with my rambles. I don't know how this will hit you. uh, I hope that for those of you that needed to hear this, you feel encouraged and empowered to embrace your faith and embrace your mental health and embrace your horsemanship and be who God designed you to be in every place you walk and in every place you ride. If that's not the heart of being a liberated equestrian, I don't know what is. And so I really do. I pray for you as a listener that you would experience the liberation we find in Christ alone. See you next time. Thank you for tuning in to the Liberated Equestrian Podcast. I'm so grateful to have you as a part of this community. If you loved today's episode, make sure to subscribe, leave a review, and share it with your fellow equestrians. For more information and ongoing support, visit theliberatedequestrian.us, where you'll find show notes and resources to help you become a liberated equestrian. The Liberated Equestrian Podcast is intended for informational and educational purposes only. The content shared in each episode, including discussions, interviews, and advice, reflects the personal opinions and professional insights of the host and guest. The information provided on this podcast is not a substitute for professional mental health care, counseling, or therapy. Listeners should consult a licensed healthcare professional for specific advice regarding their personal situations. Reliance on any information provided by this podcast is solely at the listener's discretion and risk. While every effort is made to provide accurate and up-to-date information, neither Lisa Pulliam nor the Liberated Equestrian Podcast assumes any responsibilities for errors, omissions, or outcomes resulting from the use of this information. By listening to this podcast, you agree that neither the host, guest, or affiliated party shall be held liable for any damages, loss, or harm arising from the use or misuse of the information presented. If you are experiencing a mental health emergency, please seek immediate assistance from a qualified healthcare provider or call your emergency services in your area. Thank you for listening to the Liberated Equestrian Podcast.